A few weeks ago, I was on shift, feeling burned out. I had been working long hours as a paramedic in the city. The streets were alive with the sounds of laughter, sirens, and the flickering lights of street lamps. I thought I had seen it all, but that night changed everything. My partner and I were assigned to downtown. It was a typical mix of narrow streets and old buildings covered in graffiti. We answered calls, treated patients, and maneuvered through the chaos. But this night felt different, heavier. Maybe the storm was getting to me. I remember the call, an unresponsive elderly man. When we arrived, the building was eerily quiet. The wind howled outside as we entered the dimly lit apartment. My heart raced. It felt off. The space was spotless, almost too clean. Something about it made me uneasy. The man lay in bed, smiling. I didn't know what to think. I knelt down to check for vitals. His skin was cold, but that smile sent chills down my spine. I exchanged glances with my partner, both of us puzzled. The air felt strange, almost like it was shifting around us. As we tried to revive the man, shadows flickered at the edge of my vision. I shook my head, blaming fatigue. But every time I turned to look, they disappeared. My partner asked if I saw them too. "Yeah, I think so," I replied, feeling a knot in my stomach. Then I heard whispers. They were faint, yet persistent. I strained to catch the words, but they always slipped away. My heart thudded hard in my chest. I couldn't concentrate. Outside, I saw shapes moving, glimpses of figures ducking behind corners. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Minutes dragged on like hours. I tried to focus on the man, but the whispers grew louder. I picked up my radio, but instead of normal chatter, there was only static, filling the room with noise. Panic set in as I realized how weird everything was becoming. I felt trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. Before we stepped out, I glanced back at the man. His smile hadn't changed, but something shifted in the air. I didn't know what it was, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was there with us, hidden in the corners of that perfect apartment. Once outside, the storm surrounded us, rain pelting down. A voice, soft and unsettling, asked, "Why are you here?" I spun around, but the apartment door was closed. No one was there. I could still hear the whispers in my mind as we climbed back into the ambulance. I looked at my partner, searching for answers. All I found was confusion reflected in his eyes. That night still haunts me. I can't explain what happened, and I can't shake the feeling that something dark lurks behind the veil of reality. The next day, I couldn't shake the shadows from my mind. I called in sick. My partner thought I needed a break. Maybe he was right, but it felt more than that. I needed answers. I drove around the neighborhood, retracing our steps from the night before. The rain had stopped, but clouds hovered overhead, casting everything in a gloomy light. As I cruised down the narrow streets, I spotted the building, a nondescript apartment complex standing against the overcast sky. Taking a deep breath, I parked and got out. The air felt heavy as I approached the entrance. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find, but curiosity pushed me forward. The door creaked open as I stepped inside, the familiar scent of antiseptic mixed with something else I couldn't identify. I climbed the stairs carefully, listening for the faint echoes of my own footsteps. I reached the second floor and paused outside the apartment door. It was closed, just like the night we found him. My heart raced. I couldn't just turn back now. I rapped my knuckles against the wood, half hoping no one would answer. Silence. I was about to leave when I remembered the details from our call. The address was listed somewhere. Maybe a neighbor knew him. I turned to walk down the hall. That's when I noticed the door across from the man's apartment was slightly ajar. A flicker of movement caught my eye. I approached cautiously and peeked inside. The room was dim but furnished. A woman sat in a chair, her head slightly bowed, a white cat curled in her lap. She looked up suddenly, locking eyes with me. Her expression was one of recognition, mixed with something more. Fear? "Have you come for him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't understand. "I'm here to find out what happened to the man in the apartment." She nodded slowly, glancing nervously back into the room. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her tone grave. "He was always different." "Different?" I pressed. "What do you mean?" Her eyes darted around, like she was expecting someone to appear. "He drew things," she whispered, "things that shouldn't be seen. I warned him, but he couldn't help it." Unease curled in my stomach. What kind of things? She held my gaze for a long moment before responding. "Things from the other side. Shadows that hungered." Suddenly, my skin prickled with the sense of being watched. I looked back to the hallway, half expecting to see something lurking. My heart raced as she added, "You have to leave. They'll come for you, too." Before I could ask more, she quickly stood and rushed into her apartment, slamming the door. Confusion swept over me. My thoughts blurred, and panic washed over me. I stepped back, wanting to run, but then everything went dark. The lights flickered out. I felt a presence gathering around me, shadows whispering in my ears, echoing the woman's warning. Fear clutched my throat. I couldn't breathe. Someone was in the building, and this time, I wasn't alone. I stumbled back, my back brushing against the wall. Darkness enveloped me, turning the hallway into a maze of fear. I wanted to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. Then, without warning, the lights flickered back to life. I glanced around, heart pounding. Nothing had changed in the hallway, but the air felt charged, electric. I had to get out. Rushing toward the stairs, I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye. I froze. A figure stood at the far end of the hall, partially shrouded in shadow. I couldn't make out any features, only a dark shape that seemed to pulse and shift. Panic surged through me. "Who are you?" I called, my voice breaking. The figure didn't respond. It simply shifted closer. I turned and bolted down the stairs, feeling the cold, clammy air brush against my skin. Reaching the lobby, I skidded to a halt. The front door had swung shut, locking me inside. I rushed to it, pushing against the cold metal, but it wouldn't budge. My heart raced as I glanced back to the staircase, half expecting to see the shadow emerging behind me. "Help!" I shouted, my voice breaking. The figure didn't respond. It simply shifted closer. I turned and bolted down the stairs, feeling the cold, clammy air brush against my skin. Reaching the lobby, I skidded to a halt. The front door had swung shut, locking me inside. I rushed to it, pushing against the cold metal, but it wouldn't budge. My heart raced as I glanced back to the staircase, half expecting to see the shadow emerging behind me. "Help!" I shouted, desperate for anyone to hear me. No response came. The building felt hollow, sinister in its silence. I noticed a window to my left and sprinted over. The glass was old and grimy, but I could see the street outside. The gray clouds had thickened, shadows pooling in every corner. I leaned against the frame, trying to pry it open, but it was stuck. I could hear my breath quickening, echoing in the empty space. Then I saw it. A flicker of movement in the reflection. I turned, and there it was, the figure from the hallway, now standing just outside the entrance, watching me. Its shape warped and twisted, a grotesque outline against the glass. I stumbled back, a chill racing down my spine. "Leave me alone!" I yelled, panic threading through my voice. The figure took a step forward, its presence weighty and suffocating. It seemed to grow larger, as if the darkness itself had drawn closer. I shook my head, disbelieving what I saw. This wasn't happening. I needed to escape. With renewed determination, I returned to the front door and slammed my shoulder against it, again and again, adrenaline pumping through my veins. Then I heard a sound, a low, rumbling laugh that felt more like a tremor. It echoed through the building, sending a jolt of fear down my spine. I hesitated, glancing back toward the window. The figure had vanished, leaving only an unsettling emptiness behind. I turned back to the door, ready to charge again, when I heard a soft knock. Just one, but it was enough to freeze me in place. My blood ran cold as I recognized it. It was a knock from the hallway. That single sound filled me with dread, a warning that whatever awaited me beyond the door was far worse than I had imagined. I held my breath, straining to hear through the heavy silence. Another knock echoed softly, coaxing me closer to the door. My hand trembled as I touched the metal handle, torn between the urge to flee and the burning curiosity to know what lay beyond. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling as I spoke. No answer came, only the sound of my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. I decided to stay quiet, hoping the fear would pass. I needed to think. If I could figure out how to get out of this building, maybe I would be safe. As I turned to scan the lobby, something shifted in my peripheral vision. The figure? Was it moving again? It felt as though the shadows themselves danced along the walls. I rubbed my eyes, willing myself to see clearly, but when I looked again, nothing was there. Maybe I was just imagining things. The anxiety of the whole situation must have driven me to this point. I stepped away from the door, breathing deeply as I fought to calm myself. Then my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. The sound cut through the tension, startling me. I fumbled to pull it out, praying for something, anything that would help me. It was a text from my friend Sarah. "Where are you? I'm worried." Relief flooded me at the thought of someone outside this nightmare. She never hesitated to help me. I quickly typed back, "I'm trapped in the old office building. Something is wrong." I hit send and waited, glancing back to the unnerving door. Seconds dragged into an eternity. I could almost hear the whispers again, close and mocking. Just as I was about to send another message, the phone vibrated again. Heart racing, I opened the reply. "Stay where you are. I'm on my way." On my way? My chest tightened. I didn't want anyone else coming here. The thought of another person facing whatever darkness haunted this place made me feel sick to my stomach. Suddenly, the room temperature dropped. I looked up just in time to see icy breath fogging the air before me. Panic clawed at my throat as the whispers intensified, swirling into a chaotic frenzy. My instincts screamed at me to run. I backed toward the window, but my body collided with something behind me. A figure stood, shoulders squared, observing me. In that instant, everything turned cold. Dread rooted me to the spot. I turned slowly, and there it was, the shadow figure. Only now it was closer. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its gaze, like a weight pressing against my chest. "Leave me alone!" I shouted, desperation spilling out. My voice echoed in the hollow building. But instead of retreating, the figure reached out, a gnarled hand stretching towards me, its fingers elongated and twisted. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, casting strange shadows over the walls. The room felt alive, a tension building with every breath. Then everything went dark. I gasped, the oppressive silence suffocating. I was swallowed by the void, unable to tell where I was. My pulse raced as I tried to focus. Fear coursed through my veins. And then I heard it. A soft whisper right next to my ear. "You can't run." My eyes fluttered open, but I couldn't see anything. It felt like I was encased in a shroud of nothingness. Panic bubbled up as I reached out, hands flailing in the darkness, seeking something solid, anything to anchor me. "Sarah?" I whispered, betraying my own fear with the sound of her name. No response came back, only the lingering echo of the shadow's words. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to summon the courage to move. I had to find a way out. I forced myself to breathe steadily despite my racing heart. Slowly, I pushed myself up from the floor where I had collapsed. The chill hung in the air, swirling around me, and I shivered as I took a cautious step forward. My foot connected with something, hard and cold. I bent down to feel it. A desk? I recalled the office layout vaguely from my earlier moments in the building. The lobby had connected to a narrow hallway leading to the back offices. It was my only option. I began to crawl, keeping low to the ground. I moved slowly and deliberately, listening for any sounds, the whispers, the figure, anything. My fingers brushed against sharp objects hidden in the dark, the remnants of a life that used to be. It sent cold dread through me. Just then, I felt a rush of air brush past my face. I froze. There was something near, something I couldn't see. The air crackled with an energy that felt almost electric. "Please, no," I whispered, my voice a trembling plea. The memories of the shadow clawed its way back into my mind. It was here. Was it watching me? I pressed myself against the floor, trying to meld into the shadows, hoping to become invisible. Then I heard it again, a soft, raspy whisper, growing closer and more insistent. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice was low, velvety, and sinister, wrapping around me like a sinister caress. I could feel its presence edging in, narrowing the space around me. I scrambled back, my fingers stretching out to cover any trace of light. I needed to get to the hallway, to escape into the unknown. I pushed myself up, hands braced against the desk, but the moment I stood, the lights flickered on, momentarily blinding me. Then everything felt wrong. The shadows twisted grotesquely, coiling and slinking along the walls like snakes. The figure I had seen before flooded back into my mind, and terror seized me once again. Suddenly, a thud rang out from the hallway. My heart stopped. Someone, or something, was in the building with me. The fear of the dark was nothing compared to this new threat. With no time to waste, I forced myself into action. I ran, adrenaline surging through my veins as I dashed towards the hallway. I couldn't look back, not now. The figure's cold voice chased me. I needed to get out. But as I entered the hallway, a silhouette loomed in the doorway at the far end. I stumbled to a halt, dread pooling in my stomach. I was no longer alone, and I wasn't sure which encounter would be worse. I glanced towards the exit, but the door I had come through was missing. Where was the way out? I needed to see, to understand what was happening before it was too late. Then I spotted movement near the dark figure. I had to know what it wanted, who it was. I felt a chill creep down my spine as I took a step forward, my throat tightening with every heartbeat. I had entered a nightmare, and I was determined to find the truth, but I had no idea how deep this darkness went. The figure shifted slightly within the doorway, a faint outline against the dim light. I squinted, trying to make out its features, but all I could see was a shape that felt all too familiar. My heart raced. Was it the shadow, or someone else entirely? "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaking. Silence lingered, stretching out like a taut wire. I could feel my pulse echoing in my ears, drowning out every other sound. The silhouette barely moved, but something about its stillness made the air grow thicker. Each breath felt like an attempt to inhale shards of glass. I took a small step closer. "Please, I need help. Still no response. With each second that passed, dread pooled deeper in my stomach. I hesitated, weighing my options. I could turn back and try to find another way around, but who knew where that would lead? Or I could risk it and approach the figure. I swallowed hard and took another step forward, and then I heard it. A soft scraping sound, like nails against metal. I froze. Whatever it was moving now, just out of sight. "Show yourself!" The words burst out of me, a mix of bravado and fear. I took an involuntary step back, but my body quivered with an unwilling curiosity. Suddenly, the lights blinked out again, plunging me back into darkness. It was as if a switch had flipped, the glow extinguished. Panic flooded my system. I felt trapped. In the pitch black, the scraping sound returned, closer now. I felt a warmth wash over my skin, an indication that whatever was near was no longer just a shadow. Heart pounding, I reached out in front of me, desperate to feel something solid. Just then, something cold brushed against my fingertips. I jerked my hand away as a low growl echoed from the doorway. I stumbled backwards, colliding with the desk behind me, the edges digging into my back. "Sarah!" I screamed, desperate for her to hear, but there was no reply. That unyielding silence returned, heavy and oppressive. I was utterly alone, and that fact sunk in like a stone in water. Then the lights flashed on again. This time, clarity flooded the room. The darkness revealed the figure, and my breath caught. It was a woman, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. "Help me," she choked out. Her voice sounded like it was coming from far away, strained and hollow. Panic twisted in my gut. If she was here, what was it that had brought her to this dreadful place? Suddenly, I heard that scrape again, but this time it was not from the figure. It resonated from beneath me, like something clawing its way up through the floor. I glanced down, heart racing, and that's when I saw it. A hand protruding from the darkness, grasping. Gasping, I turned back to the woman, but she was gone. Only silence remained, the shadows creeping closer. I stumbled forward, desperate to escape this place. I was running out of time, and something was closing in. I needed to find another way out, and fast. I bolted across the room, every instant screaming at me to flee. The hand from beneath the floor clawed at the air, fingers splayed out as if trying to grasp something solid. The shadows seemed to ripple around me, drawing closer with each step I took. The door loomed ahead, inviting and threatening all at once. I reached for the handle just as I felt a gust of cold air sweep past me. I turned, looking back. Nothing, just darkness. But I knew better. Something was there. I pushed the door open and stumbled into the next room, heart racing. The light was dimmer here, flickering above me as if struggling to stay alive. I scanned the room, searching for an escape, but instead, my gaze fell upon the walls, littered with photographs. They were all of people, faces twisted in terror. Each picture told a story that sent a chill through my bones. I couldn't focus on them too long. A noise from behind kicked in my fight-or-flight response. I turned and dashed for the next door, praying it would lead to safety. But as I pushed against it, it didn't budge. It was locked. Panic set in again. I could feel my breath quickening and my palms growing clammy. The screaming faces seemed to taunt me from the walls, a haunting reminder of what might be closing in. Then I heard it. A shuffling sound, slow and deliberate. The scraping noise echoed again, now accompanied by soft, raspy breaths. My mind raced as I banged on the door, desperate for it to open, but the rattling only intensified. It felt as if the building itself was responding, groaning under the weight of unseen forces. Left with no options, I darted to the nearest window. I fumbled with the latch, but it wouldn't give. I glanced over my shoulder and froze.
The figure emerged from the shadows, its outline darker than anything I had ever seen. It stood still, but something in the air shifted. It felt powerful and distorted, like it could devour any light. "Please," I shouted, banging the window. "Help!" My voice echoed back at me, a hollow sound in the oppressive silence. I turned back, my heart pounding against my ribcage. The figure moved closer, and I could see its features begin to sharpen, revealing a face that was far from human. My scream died in my throat as I pressed back against the cold glass, realizing I was trapped. Just then, as if on cue, the lights flickered above. For a moment, everything dimmed to near darkness again. But through that fleeting shadow, I caught a glimpse. A flash of light spiraled into the room from the corner. It illuminated a small stack of papers on a nearby table.
Instinct kicked in, and without thinking, I darted toward them. This might be my only chance to uncover what had happened here, my only bridge to understanding the unnatural occurrences around me. I grabbed the papers and quickly scanned them. The words leaped off the page. Caution. Do not engage with the shadows. They live off fear. I barely had time to digest the warning before everything plunged back into darkness. The figure was now at the window, its face mere inches from mine, void of humanity and full of something far more sinister. Breath hitching, I realized I needed to act fast. I might not have much time left. I slammed the papers against my chest, heart racing. The room plunged into complete darkness, and I could feel the figure's breath. The icy air that wrapped around me was filled with something foul. Panic clawed at my insides as I fumbled in the dark, desperate to escape. I could hear its raspy breaths right next to my ear, a sickening sound that made my stomach churn. The window was my only exit, but it was still barred tight. I wrestled with the latch again, my fingers slipping on the metal as I fought against the overpowering dread. Suddenly, as if sensing my desperation, the lights flickered back to life, just long enough for me to see the figure fewer than 3 feet away. Its eyes glinted with a malevolence that paralyzed me. I wanted to scream, but my voice was caught in my throat. Then I remembered the papers. I quickly flipped through them, my eyes scanning for anything useful. The words "do not engage" echoed in my mind, but I felt something shift inside me. I was tired of running. I needed to take control. In a desperate gamble, I shouted, "You can't have me!" The words surprised me, a boldness that felt foreign on my tongue. The figure recoiled slightly, as if my declaration had weight. It paused, and for a moment the shadows around it flickered in response, almost losing coherence. I seized the opportunity. The flickering lights cast brief flashes, illuminating the room. The table was an old antique, and I noticed a small drawer on its side. I dashed toward it, shoving aside the papers. My heart raced as I pulled it open, revealing a small flashlight and a rusty dagger. I grabbed both, feeling a surge of courage. Before I could think twice, I pointed the flashlight directly at the figure. The beam of light cut through the dimness, revealing more than just its grotesque features. It seemed to writhe as the light met it. "Stay back," I warned, the Arabic light illuminating the shadows dancing around it. It shrank back slightly, a thin hiss escaping its form. But then a sound came from behind me, a loud banging on the door that rattled the entire frame. "Is anyone in there?" A voice shouted, strong and urgent. My heart leaped. Hope surged through me. But did I dare call out? What if the figure attacked in that moment? "Help!" I shouted, letting the desperation in my voice carry. "Please help me." The banging on the door continued, louder now. The figure's face twisted in anger, the darkness around it growing more pronounced, as if feeding off my fear. I was trapped between multiple threats, both my saviors and my tormentor. Suddenly, the door burst open. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the horror before me. I turned to see a uniformed officer enter, eyes wide in shock as he took in the scene. But just as quickly, the figure lunged forward, its mouth opening wide. My hands trembled around a dagger. This was it. I would have to fight for my life. My hand tightened around the dagger. Just as I prepared to thrust it at the figure, I caught the officer's eyes. His flashlight swept across the room, illuminating my terror-stricken face, the dagger in my grip, and the grotesque creature poised to strike. "Back away from her!" the officer shouted, brandishing his own weapon as he stepped into the room. His commanding voice cut through the air, but it only enraged the figure further. In a split second, the shadowed thing lunged at me. I ducked and rolled to the side, barely avoiding its grasp. The floor felt cold beneath me, a stark contrast to the heat of fear coursing through my body. "Don't engage it!" I heard the officer yell, but his words were drowned out by the chaos swirling around us. The flashlight beam flickered erratically as the officer rushed forward. He aimed his weapon again, and I instinctively moved to grab the flashlight from the floor, trying to steady it as best I could. The glow caught the figure momentarily, and it hesitated, a sound like boiling water escaping from its throat. It looked almost liquid, spilling and gathering, shifting in form and fury. I felt a shiver run down my spine. "What do we do?" I shouted, fear edging my voice. The officer's face darkened with doubt, the urgency of the situation weighing heavily on him, too. "Just keep your light on it. We need to contain it," he called back, stepping closer. He used his own flashlight, but the creature, fueled by our fear, hissed louder and lunged again. "Get out of here!" I yelled, not caring about the fear in my voice anymore. It was survival. The officer hesitated, caught between protecting me and his instincts to retreat. But then something unexpected happened. The figure halted, stopping abruptly as if caught between two worlds. I noticed the room felt colder, the air heavier. My resolve hardened. I pointed the flashlight directly at its face. "You don't own me!" For a moment, the figure flickered, and I saw it for what it truly was, an entity made of shadows, afraid of the light. It shifted, almost confused, and I used that moment to turn toward the officer. "We have to push it back, together." The officer solidified his stance, his voice firm. "Right, on 3, we focus the light. 1, 2, 3. We both blasted the light in unison, beams crossing over our adversary. It shrieked, the sound piercing through the air like glass shattering. The figure writhed in agony, the darkness around it shrinking. But then, unexpectedly, the door slammed shut behind the officer. A second deafening crack echoed through the room. I froze. It was as if something surged through the house, locking us in. "Open the door!" I screamed, dread pooling in my gut. The figure seemed to sense the shift in energy, growing bolder with my fear. "I can't!" the officer shouted, pressing his body against the door. "It's not just a spirit. Something else is happening." That's when I spotted it, a glimmer beneath the floorboards. An object pulsed faintly, almost calling to me. "Look!" I shouted, pointing toward the ground. Before I could grasp what it was, the figure lunged again, furious and desperate. The dagger slipped from my fingers, clattering away from me. I had to act fast. The choice was becoming clearer, but the dangers were growing ever darker. In that chaotic moment, fear melded with urgency. I lunged for the glimmer beneath the floor, my fingers brushing against something cool and smooth, like a stone. I grasped it tightly, instinct telling me it was my only chance. The officer continued to struggle against the door, but the figure was now drawing closer, and its hissing filled the air with a malevolent energy. I turned, flashlight in one hand and the object in the other, feeling an unfamiliar pulse. "I think I can disrupt it," I shouted, hoping against hope that my instincts were right. As I raised the stone, it thrummed with warmth, battling the cold that surrounded us. The figure hesitated, then lunged again, undeterred. I could see its twisted face now, a grotesque mixture of shadow and anger. The officer pushed back harder against the door, and I felt the ground shift beneath our feet as energy flickered through the space like a live wire. "Together," I called out, urging the officer to focus on the light. "We have to bind it." Without waiting for an answer, I directed both the flashlight and the pulsing stone toward the figure. Light flooded the room, mingling with the warmth of the stone, casting a bright illumination that engulfed the shadow. The creature screeched, its form distorting, and I felt a strange connection binding me to it, like it was tethering to the chaos within me. The whispers swirled around, but now they felt desperate, losing their grip. "Now!" I yelled, feeling the weight of fear shift and transform into something potent. We brought the light together, focusing it as I held the stone aloft, and the horrific shadow began to quiver. I could see it waver, the outlines of its form blurring, losing coherence. Then, with a final deafening roar, the figure lunged one last time, crashing into the light. For a moment, the world around us erupted into a cacophony of sound, and I felt an immense force pushing against us. It was as if reality was tearing at the seams, the building shaking violently beneath us. But I stood firm, gritting my teeth, focusing every ounce of willpower on the stone, willing it to consume the very essence of the shadow. Light burst from it in a radiant explosion that swallowed the darkness whole. The room filled with a blinding flash, and for a moment I was weightless, suspended in a void. Then it all imploded, collapsing in on itself like a house of cards, and I was thrust violently backwards. When the light receded, I found myself sprawled on the cold, hard floor of the lobby, gasping for breath. The officer was beside me, shaking his head as if waking from a nightmare. "You okay?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief and relief. I nodded, still reeling from the experience. I glanced around the lobby, but the darkness had lifted. The ominous presence that had once filled the corridors was gone, leaving only an emptiness. The old building felt strangely quiet, as if it had exhaled a long-held breath. Did we stop it?" I asked, still processing the reality of our survival. The officer stood, looking down the corridor. "I think so. Maybe." His brow furrowed, uncertainty lingering in his expression. "Maybe?" My mouth felt dry. He shook his head, turning back to me. "What you did, it was incredible, but I'm not sure what we really faced in there. If this place had been hiding something." I didn't have answers, but I understood what he meant. The shadows might have been driven back, but they didn't disappear entirely. I felt the lingering weight of their presence in my mind. That woman, the whispers, there was something more than just darkness at play. The officer nodded. "Let's just get out of here first. We'll sort it out later." With trembling legs, we staggered back to the exit, pushing the door open. Cold night air rushed in, clearing our heads, even as the building loomed behind us, its secrets locked away once more. As we stepped outside, the storm clouds parted overhead. A renewed sense of freedom washed over me, but darkness still lingered in the corners of my mind. Had we merely stopped something temporarily? Did the shadows lie in wait? I looked back at the aged facade of the building, a haunting reminder of what had transpired. Tremors of uncertainty coursed through me. The city hummed softly, unaware of the battle fought within those walls. I drove away, glancing at the rearview mirror. The building receded into the distance, but I knew one truth. Some places hold memories which seem intertangled with our reality. I moved on, but I still thought of it sometimes. What was real? What wasn't? Eventually I returned to my duties, but with every call I answered, every flickering light, there was a part of me that knew They might not be gone for good. I didn't need the answers. The unknown was now a part of me, haunting and gripping. I guess I'd never truly escape that night, nor the questions that echoed in my mind.